Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Hard Money Talk Show. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think in my life right now is particularly difficult, and that is talking to your children and adult children about their life and their money. So if you have a child who maybe is sitting on your couch right now and is 20 years old and won't get a job and is eating all your food and is playing video games all day, and you're just not quite sure what the heck to do with this said child of yours, maybe you feel like you failed in the parenting department, then this podcast is for you. If you have a teenage child, maybe 16, 17, and you're wondering how to raise a financial grown-up without them becoming a 26-year-old unemployed person that's still living at your house, then this podcast is for you. We're going to talk about how to talk to your children so that they become wise financial grown-ups. I have brought on my friend, my good friend, Bobbi Rebell. She just wrote a book called How to Raise Financial Grown-Ups. And I think this is a topic that is very difficult because not only is it tricky because you don't want to be raising your children once they're grown-ups still, right? But it also comes down to the fact that we have to take a look at ourselves. Why are our children not financial grown-ups when they're in their 20s? What do we have to do as parents to then change the conversations? Right? So if you feel like maybe you've screwed up and like, okay, I have a 22-year-old who doesn't have a job and, is living off of me still, maybe they're 30 and still living off of you. We're going to talk about what you can do about that today in this podcast episode. So let's go talk about this hard money talk of talking to your adult children or maybe even teenagers, right? About you need to get a job. And, I'm dealing with this now as a parent of an almost 17-year-old. We've got to get a job. You need a job because you have a car and you need to pay for car insurance and gas, and that's not my responsibility. So let's dive into this episode with Bobbi. I hope you enjoy it. Even if you're not a parent, you're going to learn some things. And definitely go and check out Bobbi's book wherever books are sold. But we're going to talk more about the book in this podcast episode. So let's go jump on in. All right, Bobbi, thank you so much for being here. So I did the intro. Bobbi Rebell is here with us. We're going to be talking about a hard money talk of like talking to our kids, right? Before I hit record, we were talking about my oldest is almost 17 and, he doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life yet, which I think a lot of teenagers and like young adults are kind of in that boat. But so we're going to talk about like the hard conversations of like talking to your, not only teenagers, but like older kids, right? Like what ages are we talking here?
So I focused the book on ages 16 to 26 for two reasons. First of all, there's a lot of information for parents of younger children. Little kids, tons of it. I mean, there's so many great books. There's elementary school, middle school, but when you get to high school and then through college, it starts to be directed towards the kids, which has a lot of value, but there's not a lot for the parents. And we parents are the ultimate stakeholders, and we can talk all we want. And this is an and, not an or, when it comes to how much schools should educate our children. Yes, to everything schools can do. Also, we, the parents, are the stakeholders because the schools ultimately are in their lives generally for 4 years for high school and 4 years for college. And I say generally for a reason, which we can talk about, but they don't really have ultimate stakeholder status because we're the ones that are going to have our lives impacted by our children's financial success. And it's a tough thing to think about, but the truth is that a lot of parents will give their last dime to their children. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of emotionally and our love, but it is a bad thing in terms of protecting our own finances. So part of this comes from the angle of we are the stakeholders and we need to protect our own finances because the last thing that we want is to be asking our children for help when we should be in retirement and enjoying them and whatever they are doing in their lives, whether it's flourishing in their careers or having grandchildren or wherever their lives take them. The second reason I chose those ages is for a very practical money skills reason. 16 is a common age, and it's 16-ish, let's say, when kids get their first big responsibility financially, whether it's a car that they have to take care of, whether they're being helped by their parents or not. They have to take out, the debit card, cash or credit card or whatever it may be, or, one of the payment apps, and pay for gas, which is on the rise, we know these days. So they're going to be hyper aware of that gasoline price. They're going to have to know to take care of that car, or it's going to get very expensive. They're going to have to know what it costs to park the car. All the things around a car are a big wake up to adulthood in terms of responsibility. And with that often comes their first job, where they actually are going to need the money, use the money, rather than just an allowance or fun money. They might have real expenses. They might be dating. They might be going out with their friends. And I know with our kids, we really pushed to have them spend their own money when they were going out with their friends. And it wasn't really, we weren't a big allowance family for various reasons. And then 26 should really be 22 or even 18. The reason I made it 26 is because we live in the real world. And in the real world here, most of our kids are going to be financially tied to us till they're 26 because
wait.
something.
I just got it. 26.
26,
oh,
the age of
no.
16. The reason, calm down. This is just, earlier is great, but I want to be honest and realistic. And we may have these stereotypes in our head that, well, they're an adult at 18, they're an adult at 22 when they maybe get out of college, and they can vote and they can go in the army and all these things. But financially, realistically, this generation of kids is often not financially able to separate till 26. And I want to be realistic and not feel that parents are set up for failure. Mm-hmm. The reason 26 has become a target number is because of something that for most of us is a good thing. And that is the ACA, which is also known as Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And that allows children to stay on, young adults to stay on their parents' health insurance till 26. So we often are tied to them till 26. Mm-hmm. And that's just being realistic. And what that's done, and I talk a lot in the beginning of the book about the societal shifts that we've had, is it has changed the perception of when they are financially separate, not just to them, but to corporations. So my daughter, who's now 25, she started her job at a consulting firm. And when they were sort of doing orientation, they told all the kids that were, 21, 22, they're new recruits out of college, try to stay on your parents' health insurance. So we're giving corporations a pass in terms of having to offer that as a benefit. We're also, we're giving kids the freedom to be in the gig economy in a positive way, but also in a negative way, because sometimes the companies that are hiring them then don't have to compensate them correctly. And make no mistake, benefits are a big part of compensation. Right. So for good or for bad, we live in the real world. I made 26 the year where it's got to go off a cliff. But the truth is, a lot of parents that I've spoken to are in some way subsidizing their children financially or tied to them financially in a way they don't want to be well after 26.
Right. And so the book that we're talking about is Launching Financial Grownups, right? I talked about that in the intro, but I just wanted to, say that again. But I'm thinking 16. Okay. So my son is 16. He'll be 17 in this summer. And he got his first job when he was 15. And yeah, he made good money. He made like $200 a week. And I was so proud of him. I set up a checking account for him with a debit card. So he now knows how to use a debit card and check his bank account balance on his phone. And he knows what overdraft fees are and, all of that kind of stuff. And he learned how to, keep track of all of that. And he learned the benefit of hard work. It's interesting to see perspectives, right? Different perspectives. So obviously I'm a single mom. So I think one way, I think the kid is brilliant, but I also see him as he has this, he has an entrepreneurial brain. He doesn't have a 9-to-5 kind of brain. I see him this month, he went and bought all of these books individually, knowing that he could flip them and make $800. So that's what he did.
Oh my God. I love that. That's
So
awesome.
I'm excited about that he has this brain that can make money in different ways. Now his father's he's lazy. He doesn't want a job, that kind of a thing. So so there's lots of, because his dad is in corporate, and I don't really think he thinks he's lazy, but in his mind, he's he should get a job. He has to know what he wants to do before he goes to college, which I agree with. We don't need to just send our kids to college not knowing what they're doing because of the student loan stuff that we've seen over the past decade,
Oh my goodness, yes.
I wonder how much of this generation that we see growing up, like when you were doing your research for the book and seeing these kids, this is what I've seen just in my experience raising a teenager now. My son and his friends seem to be very well aware of the fact that student loan debt is happening, and they don't want that. It's like they're learning from the generation ahead of them. A lot of them are not going to college because they want to take a gap year and work and figure out what they want to do before they go into a ton of debt and go into college before they know what they want to do. They want to like figure things out. Have you found that, or is that just a rarity for like what my son is doing and his friends?
I think this is incredibly typical. And I would say a few things. First of all, what's wonderful is that many of the jobs, or let's call them income streams, even many of the income streams that the next generation will tap into did not exist, not only for us, but 5 years ago. Right. So I have a 22-year-old who's graduating from NYU Tisch, majoring in film and TV. And that made me a little nervous. But here's the thing I'm realizing. I have so many people that are like, is he available? I need someone to help me make TikToks. I need someone to help me make content for my social media. I need somebody to make short films. I need someone to do ads. There's so many ways that his skills can be used, both in a corporate setting or in an entrepreneurial setting, or even as a gig setting where he's building his own film production business. None of that existed. And even the jobs that we have, look at what we are doing. This did not exist when we were in college. I'm going to guess. I think you're younger than me, but certainly did not exist. And even what my husband does, his father is a dentist, does not understand. My husband is a risk consultant. And so is, by the way, my stepdaughter, Ashley, that I was talking about before, that's now 25. These jobs did not exist. So it's important that we step back and not judge. I think a lot of people were not served well in our generation. I remember so many friends going to law school, less so medical school, but especially law school right from college because they didn't know what they wanted to do. So off they go to law school. Is it tragic? No. They can use a law degree for many things. That said, is it a little silly when we look at it now? Yes. Right. There's also a lot of ways to be valuable to companies without having that undergrad degree. I am a fan of one for my children. They have them, but I also think we are breaking out of that mold for so many reasons. Technology also helps because you can find people on LinkedIn and other places that you could not find them. I remember it's horrible, but hearing from people, my dad was a Wall Street guy, that the reason they only recruited from a handful of schools, generally Ivy League and like one random other that an executive had a tie to, was because they simply didn't have an infrastructure to go through that many resumes and sort through it. So they were an overwhelm and they needed to hire. So they would just say, well, we'll hire from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn, and, Dartmouth and University of wherever the executive went. And it wasn't that those other schools were not amazing. It was just, that's what they could find. They couldn't search for keywords on LinkedIn. Right. And those people very often had to be trained. Now they can say, I need an SEO expert. And they don't necessarily need someone with a 4-year degree. They need an SEO expert. And if that SEO expert got that training from wherever, Google has, I think, amazing courses in other places, nobody cares. And boy, can you rise. If you're good at a job, you are going to be, in this market, you're good to go. So it's really important that we step back as parents and do a lot of listening. One of my favorite people in the book that really gave me great advice, gave all of us great advice, was a woman named Tori Dunlap. She's well known for her first 100K, big on TikTok. And she really emphasized listening to your kids and hearing what they have to say. So a lot of parents ask for the script of what they should say to motivate their kids, to make sure they're aware of how to make the money to live the lifestyle that the kids want. And I really say, and this really is inspired by Tori, the script should have so much white space that there's hardly anything that you say. You are a supporting player and your kid is the main character. And you need to remember that. And you're there to support them, but you need to give them the room to figure out what they want to say in their improv.
We have the kids, right? I love that. And I love that. And I feel like that opens up a really good relationship with your kids too, when you can be that space for them to communicate what they really want and be a supporter for them. But then when do you get to the point of being an enabler, right? Of like, I'm going to you can stay here as long as you want. And, I know that in, being single, like I in my TikTok, I feel like it's either like single dad stuff or like kid toy openings, because like my girls are on TikTok too, like it's like a very confused TikTok feed. And so I don't know, because I'm single, so like I somehow just watch those kind of funny single dad things. And being in the dating world too, there's a constant joke of like, these guys who are still living at home with their mom, right? Regardless of what age they are. And I think that like as parents, we have to grow some confidence to start kicking our kids out eventually, right? At what age do we start having these hard money conversations? 16, 17, 18. Okay, that's great. You're home. You got to get a job. I'm not going to pay your car insurance. I'm not going to pay your gas. I'm not, there's some things. And to be honest, I don't feel like I'm the best at that, because like when I was in college, like my parents paid for everything. They gave me an allowance. Like I didn't have to get a job. My job was to go to school. So, which I did a terrible job with, by the way. Like I did not have any responsibility. I like basically flunked out because I was partying too much. I talk about that in my book, The Recovering Spender, that like I sold my textbooks back, like, because I ran out of money, like in the middle of my first semester. So like I didn't do a great job. Like I didn't have the responsibility of, I need to pay for my gas. I need to pay for this. When does it become like enabling? When, yes, we're launching great financial grownups. What's the line? What are those hard money talks of like, this is what you got to do?
Well, I think you're nailing it exactly there. These are really hard money talks. And there's a reason that I interviewed financial therapists for this book, because well, the truth is I was struggling with it, because you can tell people things on paper, tell your children things on paper, but getting them to actually do it is really hard. And sometimes it's a carrot and stick. I mean, I wanted them to make sure to give my husband and I power of attorney, because if something were to happen, someone has to just make sure their bills are paid at the very least, right? Nothing to, and these are all, by the way, the kids are all doing great. These are not problem kids. That gets into a whole other thing, which I do touch on a little bit in the book, and it has to do with putting up guardrails for them. But with kids that, are well-intentioned and generally good kids that want to meet their goals in life, whatever they may be, it is still hard because they'd rather just go out with their friends. And so you have to do a balance of doing. There are times when you literally, I know people are going to hate me for this, and this is a little bit controversial. Sometimes you have to do things for them so they get done. And sometimes you have to let them fail. So an example of doing things so they get done is when the now 25-year-old started that job that I spoke about. And HR famously told her to stay on her parents' plan, which she did not. She did the math and she did not. And if she had stayed on her plan, we would have parsed out her portion and she would have paid that. But they have a great 401k plan. And so she proudly told me, because, her stepmom's an author, and I do this for a living. So she's very proud. She's like, Bobbi, I'm all signed up for the 401k. I'm going out with my friends. I'm good to go. And I was like, let me see the account. Let me see it. She shows me it, throws it in my face. And I'm like, okay, stay, don't go anywhere. Stay. I know your friends are going. No, but people with kids, they know what I'm talking about. And I made her sit there and we looked, and sure enough, and so well-intentioned. Okay. She was not invested in anything, right? So you can allocate money to go, but you have to then pick the mutual fund. She had not. So I said, okay, we need to pick a mutual fund. And I said, we'll go into a deeper dive another time, but let's at least just put it, you're 22, we'll put it in an equity fund, diversified equity fund, low cost. Let's just slam it in there. We can talk about it if you want to change it later. And I show her, we choose one, and it's, mutual fund company A, equity fund. And she's like, okay, got it. I make her press the keys. That's really important with kids when you're having them do, so that they really look and stuff. And she had not picked the right one. She picked mutual fund company A, but she picked their fixed income fund. And I was like, you picked the wrong one, as she's going out the door. Bye. And I'm like, okay, I could be right and nag her indefinitely to get back into the account and watch her do it. I could, quote, teach her a lesson and let it go. And then 30 years later, she might wake up and have been invested in fixed income for 30 years. Or I could just fix it myself and tell her that I did it. And I did the third thing, because life's too short and there are kids and we love them. And this is, again, you talk about age 26. Let's live in reality. I'm going to protect my child. She's invested in the diversified equity fund. We haven't opened it since. This was 3 years ago, probably. Now I'm saying this, I'm like, we should look at it. But I know she's at least in a diversified equity fund. I know that she's matching, and I know that she was set to increase her contributions. right? So I did that. But there are times when you're just going to let them fail or come to the edge of failing, and they just have to deal with it. She was due for jury duty and she called us, and she's in Indiana and she's calling us. We're on like a ski trip. And she's like, oh my God, I have jury duty tomorrow. And I'm not going to be able to be in New York. What do I do? I can't be in New York. Are they going to put me in jail? And I'm like, no, I sent you a screenshot of your jury duty notice. Cause that's fair. She doesn't live at home. Find it and call them. She's like, can you? No, really, I'm too busy. And I'm standing, with my husband. We're like at the ski place. And I'm like, no. He's like, shouldn't we just do no, 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 no. And you know what? She finally called the number and they were like, no problem.
It is. And I had a similar thing with my son the other day. He's in driver's ed because I made him take driver's ed because he's going on my insurance policy. And I'm like, we're getting the savings for that. And he missed, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, driver's ed is still in my area it's like online, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But so he's doing it online and he missed 2 classes. And I was like, hey, you missed 2 classes. You need to go make those up. He's like, well, can you email the professor? And I'm like, no, that's your job. Like, this is your class. And so he got really pissy and he threw a little temper tantrum. And then half an hour later, he went and he emailed the professor and he got to make up the classes and stuff like that. But I'm like, not only is this affecting my insurance, this is going to affect your insurance and what you're going to be paying me for the next, few years, because you're getting a job this summer and you're paying me for the insurance. Because it's expensive. It's costing me like an extra $200 a month to add you to my insurance policy. That's not a freebie. Like, you need a job to go and pay those things,
It's responsibility. And we parents also need to step up and understand when we need to step back. So just recently we are planning a family trip and I do advocate, if you want to take a family trip, you can pay for your kids, even if they're adults.
Mm-hmm.
But we're taking a family trip next August, and Bradley's age 22, his passport is expired. And my husband and I went to get it renewed.
Mm-hmm.
And we were informed. Now, we did not tell Bradley. Bradley did not ask us to do this. This is just, we said, oh, our child's passport's expired. Let's go get it renewed. And, we remembered that you have to go 2 people to the post office. I mean, this is really embarrassing. I can't believe I'm sharing. But anyway, so the 2 of us, our child is 22. We decide we have to go to the post office together, as you do when you have children, at least in New York State, to get the thing renewed. And this woman was like, looked at us like we were crazy. And she's like, no, he's an adult. He has to come himself.
And you're like,
he has to make an appointment himself, and he has to come himself. And that was totally on us. We then texted him. He's like, okay. And he made an appointment like within 5 minutes to get his passport. Like, we did not give him the credit, nor did we understand that while we are his parents, he is a legal adult.
Yeah.
And we cannot get his passport for him.
Right.
Even though we perceive him as our child, which is really messed up. So that's why that's why the book's for the parents.
Right.
Because what are we thinking? Like, oh my gosh.
So when you were interviewing a lot of these financial therapists, right? What do you see as like some of the things that hold us back from having these hard money conversations? What were kind of the common things?
I think a lot of it is we are a generation of helicopter parents, and we are a generation where we were told everything goes to the children. Your children come first. And that sounds really great emotionally and as a society. But if we look back to other generations, that wasn't really true. I mean, people laughed at, like, I'm a Gen Xer. I mean, our parents would just like open the door, be like, go play outside. Right. And what happened was we started, there's these big societal shifts. So especially when women started working in the workforce, we have, a really messed up situation where school ends around 3 or 4, and then work doesn't until 5 or 6 or whenever. And so someone has to watch the children now, right? Because we were latchkey kids and we don't want that for our kids. So now we're sort of over scheduling our children. So that's a huge cost we've taken on, and we feel guilty. And so everyone's a winner when they go to these sports, and everyone's special. But we have to recognize that just because our kids are not special doesn't mean, for example, that they should do that for a career or for an income stream. I like the term income stream. For an income stream, someone could be a very talented singer, but that's a lifestyle. Even if you make it, let's just say they make it, that doesn't mean your child wants that lifestyle. And so we have to step back and sort of be more objective about our children and where they're going to find success and happiness. And so it's really a mindset shift for parents, because as helicopter parents, we have a danger of becoming snowplow parents, which is generally referred to parents that are in, have kids in college that are just pushing all the obstacles out of the way. And then the other danger is we move into concierge parenting, which is when we are just available at all times to serve their needs and often use money to solve the problem. And that's on us. And so we have to really reset, because the kids are happy to receive, but they're often, they're being shaped by us. We're raising them to do this. So that's why I feel I really want to be talking to parents. There are a lot of books that talk to the kids. We need to also talk to the parents.
If you started 2022 with more debt than you'd like to have, you're not alone. Debt.com is here to help. Whether you still have holiday credit card debt to pay off or student loan payments are starting to build up again, maybe you even have debt collectors that are hounding you for payments you just can't make. The experts at Debt.com can help. Finally, one website can help you solve your debt problems. Credit cards, back taxes, student loans, medical debt, collections, you name it, Debt.com can help you solve it. And they do it with no judgments, because they understand that when people end up in debt, it's usually for things outside their control, like job loss or divorce or some other hardship. So if you're in debt, visit laurengrutman.com/debt to get the relief you need, or call 888-431-2044 to get a free consultation with a debt relief specialist. Find solutions to get out of debt, fix your credit, and get on the path to achieving your financial goals. When life happens, visit Debt.com. I think you bring up a really good point. And that was when you said that we have guilt, right? Maybe guilt. And I see this a lot in just not only friends, but in people in like my communities on my website, right? Is we have these overworked moms who then have this societal pressure that their kids need to be in sports practice, and they need to be in ballet 5 days a week, and they need to be doing this, and they need to be doing that. And then they need to be going on family vacations, and the kids need to have the best clothes, and they need to be doing, all the things, and have the best car and the best friends, and the pressure that gets put on the parents to do everything for the kids, because they have this internal guilt of like, I'm not around, so I'm just going to pay for them to be happy, right? And then that doesn't make a good financial grown-up going into, it doesn't help the child at all, right?
No,
damaging, I feel like.
it's guilt from us, but it's also peer and societal pressure that our lives should revolve around our kids. How many parents out there know their child's parents' friends as just so-and-so's mom?
Right.
Like, you don't even know really their name. You might have to look it up. There are people that like you call each other by so-and-so's mom or dad. Come on. That's a real signal. I think we achieve so much of our identity through our children that it becomes very hard to let go.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's also, I mentioned technology with careers. Technology has had so many positive effects on our relationship with children, but it also is an enabler. So you would go to college or to summer camp even, and summer camp, they take the phones away. But let me tell you, my son's very good at sneaking that phone. He was at a no phone camp, and somehow my stepdaughter, he's very close. So the 14-year-old is very close to the 25-year-old. And she slipped up that he was texting her. And I was like, well, how does Harry have a phone? And she said, oh, oops. So, but in seriousness, like, so you'd go to college and your parents would say goodbye. And maybe there were some negatives because you were over partying. They weren't checking in with you maybe as much as they could have if they had phones, but we didn't have cell phones where you were texting your parents back and forth, but now they do. And I see my friends that have kids away. So my son that's in college now is in New York City where we are. So there's not a lot of that. He can stop by anytime, and he's here maybe at least once a week, but there's a lot of communication. So you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And they're getting texts constantly. Mom, how do I do this? Dad, how do I do this? Or what do you think about this? Or I'm sad about this. I'm home, and they almost know too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're in college and you're out of sight, out of mind, your parents sort of aren't worrying about you that much in terms of the minutia of the day to day. They don't know that maybe you went out and drank too much. Maybe you made some bad judgment calls at a party, whatever it may be. They're not involved in the minutia of your life. But if you're constantly texting them and they're seeing pictures, my friend showed me her daughter, who's so sweet and so adorable. And she literally got a text from or a little film from her daughter, whatever, a little video that showed her daughter in college. She's a freshman being lifted up by these guys and like doing what do you call it with a beer?
Keg stand?
A keg stand. Yes, she was doing a keg stand and she showed her mom. So the positive is her mom knows she, is in communication. They have a great relationship. It's going to be happening anyway. But she's like, oh, how do I feel about this? Right.
Ooh,
so it's sort of like we're seeing more than maybe we should or we want to, but it's not that that wasn't going on. It's that now there's this sort of like, there's, total transparency in many cases because so many of us have great relationships with our adult children.
Mm-hmm.
So much good coming from that, but also a recipe for enabling in many cases because we are in so much more communication. And it's a lot harder to just say, well, here's some money, go get a job, go to school. We'll see you at the end of the semester because you're constantly together.
Because you can't
technology.
Because you're on your phone all the time and you're texting and all of that.
You know what they're doing. You can follow them on Instagram. I mean, they might have a Finsta too, but you definitely can know a lot more than you would before. And that can influence how you support them for good and for bad.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, looking at, the age of 26 too, does the role of like weddings and like that kind of stuff still play into that, cause I mean, I got married to my kid's dad really young. We were 21. So like, my parents paid for the wedding but I was so young, I think now it seems like people are getting older, like getting married older, that the parents aren't paying for the wedding as much. But did that play a role in your research too?
Well, I didn't get into, marriage these days statistically is generally over 26. So I don't address that directly. Maybe that's an idea for another book.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does depend. I think there's a lot to be said though about the influence of social media.
Mm-hmm.
For good and for bad, again, because there's a lot of influence and we'll see how, I don't know what's going to happen out of COVID because I think there was a real beauty to the small weddings that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hearing, through statistics and just the news that there's going to be a big wedding boom and maybe people will be having these big receptions. So I just don't know. But I do think there's a lot more awareness of what things cost because of the internet and because so much more information from people like you is available. And I think that's really helpful to people. I mean, one negative is a lot of kids were sort of afraid of credit because they saw their parents get into credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
And we do need to understand credit and use it properly so that you can qualify for loans and such. And, having a good credit score is very important. And you do have to do the things needed to get that. And so Ashley was very aware, even through college, of doing specific things so she would have a good enough credit score so she could buy the apartment that she bought at age 24.
I think that's a good conversation to have though. Like, cause I talked to my kids. I mean, I have a video actually on my YouTube channel. I'm going to put it in the show notes because it's from when my kids were very young. I think my son, my youngest is 8. And I think she was like under a year doing this video. And I interviewed them about like coupons and credit cards. And it's hilarious. It's like our favorite family video. We go back and watch it all the time. And I've been talking to them about credit cards and debt, for their whole life. And one of the things that I've just recently started talking to Andrew about, my son, is about credit and how to start building it up now, at 16 and at 18 and like to have that good credit score, because there's some financial professionals that say credit scores don't matter. And it's like, no, they actually do. Like you really need to have one. If you're going to buy, even rent, they're checking credit scores, everything. And so it's important to teach your kids at 16, 17, 18, how to get a good credit score. And what is your take on like adding them as like authorized users to your cards, at 18?
So I am pro doing this at whatever age, the earliest possible, because the truth is you just set up a spending limit. You can have a spending limit of $200.
Right.
So why not teach them that way? I think it's a great way to do it. And remember, they also can piggyback on the length of your credit. It gives them more time.
Exactly.
So it's very valuable. And it can be a point of discussion because I've had, so we did that with our kids. We actually added them. We have one really expensive card that has been worth it. It's an Amex that allows all of us to be in the lounges at the airport. I don't remember, I don't know the levels. My husband's the main person. And then for one fee, you can add 3 people. And maybe you have an affiliate link to put in the show notes for
yes.
you. Ooh,
I do
always
have
be
I do
entrepreneurial.
have a similar Amex, so I'm like,
Yes. So, but we found it very valuable because I could see what everyone was spending, and then it's a way to discuss. So I think I'm very pro that. They would get frustrated because sometimes they would hit their limit and they'd be like, wait, I can't spend anymore. And I'd be like, well, let's discuss where you spent the money. And also, they also learned so much about the benefits because we told them that they could go into airport lounges with it, right? They can go into the American Express Centurion lounges with it. That was very important, by the way, because Ashley was at school at Indiana. So she's at airports alone. And then Bradley was a fencer and he traveled to national tournaments alone when he was old enough because we couldn't just always get on a plane with him. And so he was at lounges alone. And let me tell you, by the way, the money you can save, talk about coupons and stuff, you can save a ton of money if you can put your teenage and young adult boys in free food land, which is what you have at these airport lounges, and just feed them there and have them load up at the lounge. The best money spent ever. But we incentivize them. We're like, there's other benefits. So go to the Amex page and see what else you can get with your cards. And that's great because then again, they're at the keyboard. And that's a really important thing is if you're going to do stuff for them, don't do it for them, do it with them. So even if you're paying, have them press the keys. And even with Bradley, who's in college, he has a debit card. And if we're going to reimburse him, we have him buy it first on the debit card. So he really feels it. And then he has to send us the receipt and show it to us. And that's all done electronically. It's very easy. I know a lot of people believe in the cash method, and I applaud that if it works for you. For us, realistically in the world, I like seeing stuff on my computer. I love the fact that I don't want him to hand me a little tiny receipt and be sending me this stuff. I love that I can see in real time. And even with my little one who's 14, he's got an app, and I just, the other day we were ordering in something not healthy for lunch. I'm just going to say that with my team was here for my book launch, and my son, this is unbelievable. This is truly generational. I think so. He literally was like, I can't eat stuff there. Can I please get a salad? Not making this up. And I was like, okay. And I put money, I just shot some money over to his debit card. And it was just like, it's like, I don't know if it's Apple Pay that, he's got it hooked up to Apple Pay. So he just, scans it at the stores, and I can see what he spent on his salad and what's left. And I know that he went there, by the way, and he was happy. So I think the electronic and the credit cards and, you have to live, as I said, again, back to the 26, live in reality. For me, I don't know that envelopes of cash for my family in New York City is the reality. It can be a great learning tool for people. And we have had, by the way, when he was little, we did do the 3 jars that Ron Lieber, who's in the book, recommends. And we did count money and deposit it in the bank. And I remember him saying how much better quarters were because they went so much further. Like he was like, all these pennies, and it's worth like 2 quarters. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But it was great. And I did social media on that. It was really cute. It was a cute social media.
I did the same with my kids. I have them all their own debit cards and their own bank accounts, and I can transfer money from my bank account on my app into their bank accounts, and they have their own debit cards, and I have debit cards, their accounts. And it just works better for us that way.
You can see what they're doing.
Right. Yep. I like it. I can see exactly what they're doing. I can be like, Andrew, you're overdrawn by $5, right? And he's like, oh, I'm like, you got to go check it out and fix it. And then he'll ask me, do you have any work that I can do on the website, or do you have any work I can do around the house? Do you need something done? And he gets to work, and I always have stuff for him to do, And so it puts a fire under his butt to do something about it, So, we have I'd say about 10 minutes left. So if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I want to raise a financially smart grown-up, but I feel like I'm too late, right? Maybe their kids are in their 20s and they're like, I really screwed up. I didn't teach them good finances. What are some healthy boundaries that they can set now to maybe stop the enabling, or, try and teach their kids now? I think maybe some people listening might have regret, because I feel like we have a lot of financial information for people younger, like you said at the beginning of this interview, for people that are younger, for people that maybe have teenagers, because teenagers are still moldable, right? But now we have like 20-year-olds, and you're feeling like, I got this 20-year-old that's still in my house, doesn't have a job, playing video games all day. I feel like I just screwed up. Like, what do we do in this situation? Because I feel like those are kind of the harder conversations where it's like, you got to kick the kid out or like make him get a job, or you know what I mean? Like, it gets harder there.
It gets harder the longer it goes on. So you need to set an exit strategy, and you need
Mm.
to be very specific, and you may have some very uncomfortable conversations. And that's a very mild word that I'm using,
Mhm.
but it's really important that you have them and understand that you're not their friend, you're their parent, and you love them, and they deserve to have their own life.
Ooh, I love
And
that.
so
They
they
deserve
do.
to have their own
They
life. That's
do.
powerful.
They do. And you are taking away from them, and you are undermining their ability to be adults when you do this past. And I like 26 is an artificial age. Every parent knows their kid. Okay. So you have to adjust that to what works for you. If you have an 18-year-old that doesn't go to school and is just endlessly in the house doing nothing, that's obviously a time when you have to have a conversation. But you have to have them fill in the white space and figure out their plan. And if they don't have a plan, then they need to just earn money. They get to just earn money, and that's okay. There's a great book by Terry Trespicio called Unfollow Your Passion. And she talks about the fact that she had these ideas of how she wanted to have her life be. And she was waiting for the perfect job and this and that. And then she just got a job. It was just a job. I think it was a receptionist job, which by the way is perfectly fine. And she learned so much from it because she had to show up on time. She had to be dressed properly. She had to interact with adults. She had to figure out what she would eat for lunch, how she would pay for lunch, how she would pay for her clothing. She got paychecks. She understood there were taxes coming out. And so you have to make them get any job. And I don't want to say let go of their dream, but put pause on their dream and live their life, because we can lose our life waiting for our dream. And also, we might discover our dream while living our life. So you've got to do that. You've got to make sure that they understand that and not deprive them of that. And also, it's important to instill in them, because very often there's underlying issues. And I do recommend therapy if it is something extreme. There's sometimes underlying issues, very often confidence in themselves that might be undermining their ability, or feeling overwhelmed and just not knowing where to start. I think a lot of us have those. And for me, I will literally, like, I have a little list today of what I'm doing after this podcast because I feel very overwhelmed. My book came out 2 days ago, and I feel like there's so much stuff I should be doing, but sort of I have to manage my own schedule. There's no one saying do this first, do that first. So I make lists, accountability, have them schedule out their day. What will you be doing today towards getting yourself into a place where you can live your own adult life? Because ultimately, I mean, they're friends. We talk, my son's going to probably move back here temporarily after he graduates from college. We're immediately already 6 months, but his lease is up in August. So we're talking about, well, what will be his exit strategy? Because it's lame to live at home with your parents forever. It's smart for a few years to save up money, but like, what is he going to bring his girlfriend here? I mean, you talk about men. I mean, come on, it's lame. So, and ultimately, you're not living your life. Now, there are generational households on purpose, I do want to say, that are wonderful. If it is done on purpose, sometimes you have to support an older relative. Sometimes there's a reason, medical reasons. That is not the case. I'm talking about when they're there because they just can't be adults. And that's when you have to step in, and you have to be proactive about the things that you're doing, but you also have the ability to stop enabling. Very often you're giving them money for things or supporting them, and you don't have to. You can't ultimately control an adult child that is living in your house, but you can control what you do. So really focus on what you can do to help them be the adults they need to be.
I think that's such powerful wisdom, because I think about, we on the podcast, I've interviewed a couple people that are dealing with addictions, right? And, even enabling somebody who has an addiction to alcohol or drugs, it's a similar thing that, we need to check ourselves first of like, why am I continuing to enable and pay for this person's stuff? A lot of times I feel like it comes back to like, maybe we have fear of saying no, or we're a people pleaser, or, we feel guilty or shame or whatever. If we can change ourselves and look at ourselves, we really could be harming the other person, their future, by not dealing with our own stuff, right? By that enabling behavior is very damaging to other people. and we don't think that through. And there's this great book that I always recommend to people. It's called Codependent No More, if you've heard of it. And I love that book, and it talks about codependency and enabling behavior. So if you're like dealing with that, and then that's a great book to pick up. But I appreciate you coming on the show today.
We want to feel needed is what I was going to say, is look at that. Is it your need to feel needed, your need to have a project, your need to have purpose? Because very often when our children leave the nest, we are lost and we're scared to not be needed. So I want people to think about that as well. And I want to give one other tip that a friend of mine, who I'm not going to say her name because she's actually a famous person that people have heard of. When she was in her 20s working in New York City, she complained that her mother, who was, upper middle class background, would come and would treat her to a spa day and would treat her to, like, she said, Jimmy Choo shoes and this and that. But she would never help her with the rent. She's like, I literally couldn't buy a Metro card one day. I had no money. I couldn't buy, that's it for the subway here in New York City. And I was so poor and so stretched. And my mom was like treating me to these things. And it's only in hindsight that I see the wisdom in that, that it was not her mother's job to support her lifestyle, that was for her to figure out.
Right.
And her mother, and she told me her mother would take all the tags off and like scuff up the shoes so she couldn't return them. Cause I said to her, I was like, return the shoes, get $600. And she's like, she won't let me. Like, she tears up the receipt. Yeah. I mean, well now, but this was actually, she's around my age. So it wasn't available for that. But it sounds really warped to not help your kid with their rent, but help them with, and this is not for like a minute after college. Let me be clear.
Right.
If they're on track and they're paying and they're making more and more and you're gradually paying less and less, that's fine. I'm talking about with something chronic. At a certain point, you have to be like, I'm not paying for your needs. I'll treat you to dinner.
Right.
But you have to be an adult. And again, I want to stress, not right away, give them time, but make sure that you're not undermining their ability to live also within their own means. Some of us expect our kids to live at our level when they're not there yet. Let them live within safety bounds. Let them live in a dump. It's okay. My first apartment was a 2x2. It's okay. They don't have to live at the level you do. Don't expect them to be done. Don't suggest restaurants that they go to dinner with their friends that you're going to.
Right.
Be sensitive to that. Don't be like, oh, get a new outfit here. Treat yourself. Be sensitive to where they are financially.
Yep. I love that point. And so be like, oh, you deserve better than this. Like, well, who's going to pay for it? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big peer-to-peer red flag. Like, I hate that when girls are like, you totally deserve that. You go get that $500 spa day. I'm like, no. I mean, if that's in their budget and they really want it, fine. But like, don't do that to your friends.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Well, thanks for coming on the show today. I think this is awesome. And people can go and grab your book, Launching Financial Grownups. Is it wherever books are sold, I'm guessing, right?
Launching Financial Grownups is wherever books are sold. And please follow me on social media. I am just starting a TikTok channel, so that's what I'm going to push. There's one video up there, and by the time this airs, there might be two.
Yeah.
But please go. Please go and follow me on TikTok. It's just Bobbi Rebell. And there's a little rocket ship that says Financial Grownups. And then on Twitter, I'm also at Bobbi Rebell, on Instagram at Bobbi Rebell 1. And if you need a speaker, please consider booking me to speak. I would love to get the word out now that things seem to be opening up IRL. I also do video, but I would love to just see people in person and share with you. I'm so looking forward to human interaction and seeing people in person. So if you go to my website, which is just my name, BobbiRebell, you will get all the information to book me to speak. So thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Oh my gosh, this was a joy. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Hard Money Talk Show. Glad to have you for another episode, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to have you leave a review of this show wherever you listen to the podcast. And check me out wherever you want on social media. You can find me at laurengutman.com. All of my social media links are on there. And I hope to connect with you online. And I'll see you back next week with another Hard Money Talk. Have a good day. Bye.